Okay. And this last point, oftentimes asking a question can be effective. So trying to engage the reader or having the reader think a little bit.
Yeah, as a former teacher, that was one of the things that was drilled into me is posing a question elicits much more thought than any other way of putting it. So if you can end with a question, it'll give them something to think about and make it a stronger presentation.
Any other pointers, people, for those of you who do write letters and are lucky enough to get one or two published? Okay. Giving people a reason to want electoral change. And I mean, that is so important. And oftentimes we hear from politicians, oh, well, people aren't interested. And so they let it go. Make it personal. You know, does your elected representative represent your views and values? Or are you in a safe seat? So what's the point of voting? Or, distorting the voice of voters. That's another one. We hear, the idea that we're all so polarized and divided, but when you start drilling down into the vote count, that probably isn't the case. And is your region really as progressive or conservative as the electoral map shows? And probably not. False majorities, of course. Always we hear, well, the government got a majority, but in actuality, it's a seat majority and not a voter majority. That's often something I will use when I'm writing. It's not a majority, a seat majority is not a voter majority, and very rarely is a seat majority. Does that represent a voter majority?
If I could jump in again, this is a really good list of reasons why we should have proportional representation. And often you'll get people writing a letter where they are attacking proportional representation. Well, you can spend a lot of time trying to change their mind by arguing with their particular points, or you can just go straight into all the reasons why first past the post is a bad system.
Okay, just a second here. Again, yep, we'll be sending out the slides. Okay. What next here?
Can I ask a question?
Of course, please.
Would one of the points for a reason for the change in it be that the representation we have now tends to inevitably lead to just a two-party system, and that a two-party system is definitely something that as Canadians we shouldn't want, and we see a good example of that in the States when you don't have that type of, when you only have a two-party system.
Oh, no, absolutely. And I'm just trying to think where I saw it. It was commentary saying, in a two-party system, when you want change, so you vote for the other party and you get authoritarianism as by accident. Like there's no voter choice with a two-party system. And certainly first past the post drives toward a two-party system. We just saw that here in British Columbia. We had our supposedly center party, but really more conservative, collapse, and the leader joined with the farther right conservatives. So we just lost a party, and center right voters lost a home. Basically, we saw that with the federal conservatives as well. So I think it's a really good point.
Yeah, there's a really big issue right now with polarization between the parties, and that's I guess an example of where you don't have to have people talking about electoral systems, but you can say, if we had a different electoral system, then we may not have this polarization, which seems to be growing at the moment.
May I ask another question?
Of course.
Would it be fair to say that with proportional representation, well, with two-party representation, what we have is just an antagonistic type of system where one will not let the other side win and the other side will dig its heels in Whereas with first past the post, you have a reason for more cooperative stance in getting policies passed.
You mean with proportional representation?
That's right.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes. Yes, that I think that's a big one because I think people are fed up with the nonsense that goes on. They do want parties cooperate, but the voting system itself doesn't lend itself to it. I mean, you with only a few votes in swing ridings, it that what do I want to say? It encourages more vitriolic politics. So absolutely. Okay, just some descriptors if you're talking about both systems, just to tag on adjectives: first past the post, non-exclusive, non-inclusive, exclusionary, um, archaic, antique. Um, we inherited it from Britain. And then with proportional representation, fair, representative, democratic. So just a few adjectives that you can throw in when you're writing to add a few zingers, and again, maybe um, get people thinking, what do you mean our voting system isn't democratic? And just a little all we'd like for Christmas or whatever is a vote that counts. So things to look out for. There's always opportunities to write letters, and so first of all, you might have somebody or a columnist or a friend or a letter to the editor lamenting issues of the day, the toxic atmosphere in the house, parts of the country feeling alienated. Here in British Columbia, the map shows all of the interior as blue, not quite true, and all of the coast as orange, but again, not true. But people feeling that they're not represented. Less voter choice, we were just talking about, with two parties only. Areas of the country with no representation. I mean, that's a classic in our federal politics, with Alberta often being left out of Liberal governments. Smaller parties penalized. I mean, the Green Party is a poster child with that. Had a reasonable percent of vote, and they can never break through in terms of parliamentary representation. Lower voter turnout, why bother? Policy lurch. I mean, we'll see it with with the Conservatives more than likely winning, they'll be undoing a whole bunch of Liberal policies, and then having to strategic vote, not being able to vote for who you want because you don't like the options. So those are things where proportional representation might not be talked about, or the voting system, but you can take the opportunity to say, hey, did you know this is because of the way our voting system is, and there is a better way to do it. So another opportunity, in response to a letter that supports our current voting system and antagonistic to proportional representation. Or if you're just feeling like you're creative, and just a basic general education letter indicating a problem and how PR might solve it. And this is what I had mentioned earlier. If somebody does have a letter published and they've made one or two points, but you feel you could make more, respond to that, comment on the letter. So, and that might keep the interest going, or shows that there's more than just one person in a community who is continually writing letters. Sometimes I feel like that too. So opportunities, there are lots of opportunities for writing letters. So sorry, We've put in some examples. I'm not going to read them through. Daryl gets lots of letters published, and there's a few papers that seem to publish everything you write. Daryl
Yes.
Castanet.
Thank you, Kelowna.
Yeah, exactly. And they publish Daryl's letters. He's in Vancouver, but it's a Kelowna online paper that always seems to publish. So I've just labeled it as uh, a factual hook, and just talking about it being a leftover from our colonial political system and how we get false majorities most of the time. And again, I'll send these slides out so you can take more time to read that. So his point is that it's fair, that most votes count under proportional representation. And this one, I had written another factual hook, and this was in response to us losing our center-right party. And it really was. One day they were running candidates, and the next, the leader decided the party was going to fold at the pressure of business, it would appear. And so saying, what kind of choice is that? And trying to imagine a world where we might have more choice. Now, these are so going with more of a twist and an emotional hook, really, really clever. Do you distinguish between jealousy and envy? And then she goes on about the democracy in other countries that use proportional representation. And she had written this before the Saskatchewan election. And this was another clever one, talking about our voting system as a dinosaur. So there's so many ways you can come at it, and it really depends what your preference is. Pick a fact, or I often find that the emotional thing, this catches people's attention. Like, what? What's he writing about? Google Alerts. Daryl uses this a lot. Do you want to talk about this, Daryl?
Well, it's I can't remember exactly how you get there, but
Yes, I've got up the link there.
oh,
It'll take
okay.
you there.
Yes, there's the link there, but yeah, I've listed these trigger words. Sometimes you get things that have nothing to do with it. You get sports items and that because of going first past the post, making the goal post and all that sort of thing. But it gives you a fair number goes through the media and picks out those reports that use those trigger words, and so it gives you an in to writing letters. You can respond. It'll take you to the media source, and you can respond to that.
How to get your letter published now. And I guess the first thing is to realize that you're not going to get them all published. Or I have my local newspaper, I'll write something that's timely and then it doesn't appear. And then 3 or 4 months later, all of a sudden it appears. And I'm like, what? What's that got to do with whatever? So, but topical, timely, tight. And if you are responding to somebody, follow the guidelines for the media. If you don't get published, keep on going.
Yeah, I think it's important to at the beginning you put down whatever the item is that you're referring to, the title of the piece that somebody wrote, their name and perhaps the date and all that. It gives more of a reference point to the letter that you're writing, and I think the media appreciates that kind of tie-in to their stories.
Yeah, and of course, right, if you're responding to a letter to the editor or an article in the paper, or you may not be, and then however you choose to title it, what you want, the point that you are trying to make. We've called it letter writing, but there's lots of opportunities in social media if you are on different forms of social media. And sometimes I'll find I don't have the time to comment or write a letter on something, but but I can put something on my community Facebook page or whatever it may be. And Fair Vote has a Twitter account and Facebook account, so you can often comment there or retweet. Or I don't know if anybody uses TikTok. I don't, but so there's two things going on with letter writers. So there is already a letter writers group. I suspect that some of you already belong to that. Different and separate from what Daryl and I are putting forward. But that one, you can join it, and you can look at what people have done. Sometimes people will publish there, and in any of these letters that we see others writing, it goes without saying, plagiarize. You don't need to ask permission. I mean, if somebody's done a great job, you can take chunks of it, or another part of the country lift the whole thing, because why reinvent the wheel? Or put your own twist on it.
Yeah, I think some of the media are very concerned about publishing, say, a letter to the editor that's already appeared in somebody else's media. They like to be, to have the sole ownership of that particular letter.
So I think that depends. So if it's the Globe and Mail or one of the provincial papers, yeah. But if it's Daryl's letter in Castanet and you're wanting to publish it out in PEI or something, it should not be an issue, I wouldn't think. So the writers group, you can look to it for letter writing ideas, copy people. It's not a discussion group. People get so many emails that it's just about the letters themselves. And if there's other PR groups, if you want to have a discussion over various points. So that's the letter writing group. And here are a bunch of resources that if you're wanting to write on polarization or extremism, because we often get that, or, what a point that somebody has said, we can't have PR because blah, blah, blah. Here are some sources you can go to. There's a ton of webinars up there, and that's more general education because some of them can be pretty long, but lots there. And just here's a really simple explanation of PR versus first past the post. During our BC referendum campaign, we had a lot of writers writing regularly, and I don't know whether it was, I think it was Real, anyway, put together a whole bunch of points under different topics. Some of them are dated, but it is a great resource. So that's just places to go. I know sometimes I want to write a letter and make a point, and I'm thinking, oh shoot, where is that information? So. And that's also a letter writers group could be good for that too, because you could go say, look, I'm trying to make this point. Anybody have that information at their fingertips? Okay, so the immediate reason for our letter writing workshop was this idea of a letter writing campaign. How do we keep the issue in front of voters and not let it die? And keep building on that interest. So we're suggesting on a regular basis, whatever that means, monthly. We'll probably take a look at it monthly. Write local, perhaps your national newspapers on a specific topic. I've created a Google group just for this one, and we're hoping to post topics with suggested writing points on that. So again, just trying to make it easy to get these letters out, not make it a big deal. You've got the information pretty much at your fingertips. And of course, write on whatever you want. So also, and I'm not sure how this might work, part of that education process, I think, is trying to educate our political commentators and our pundits, because often I'm listening to CBC or, and people are saying things that are wrong, or, they're talking about this problem or that problem, and I'm yelling at them, yes, and if we change the voting system, that will help. So, um, trying, maybe taking turns, or, trying to, if we hear something, to respond to that. Part of the issue here is knowing where to send it. But I would love we would love some help on this. Number one, what topics could we write on? What writing points could we make? List of pundits. So if you've got a little bit of extra time on this, let me know. And then finally, if you do want to be part of this letter writing campaign, please email me. Let me know the papers that you would be focusing on, and then I will add you to our Google group called Fair FVC Letter Writing Campaign. And here's our suggestion for the first topic, polarization. And I think we see that more and more. So taking a look at that, and we could go off of what's happened with the polarization in the States. But the problem doesn't represent the diversity of views. Mergers happen and have happened across the country, reducing choice, exacerbates rural-urban divides. We know that lots of rural Canadians vote for progressive, and vice versa. Lots of urban Canadians vote conservative. And so we're starting to get this tale of this huge urban rural split. Is that the case? And it also exacerbates the regional divides. And so the problem, pick one or 2 points, and the solution. Here's how we might address, or one way we could address the issue of polarization. And this is interesting. The research shows lower levels with countries that have PR.
Can I ask a question?
Always.
Okay, so this research, is that, do we have access to the documentation of that research?
I pulled that off of the Fair Vote Canada site, and I think there is a tab called Research and Resources. I will look that up. And I think Anita referenced it with one of her latest blogs, and it is posted on the Fair Vote Canada site.
Okay. I don't always follow along as closely as I should.
Well,
But last time I looked, I didn't see the reference for that. And someone will say, well, that's prove it.
Yes, I know. And so, right, when you're writing the letter, you've got to keep it succinct. And if you start quoting all of the sources, you lose people. So it is a balancing act. On the other hand, you want to be able to back yourself up. So I do get that for sure. Right. And so harder for parties to divide the electorate when there's more choices, and culture of collaboration in the legislature produced by proportional representation. So that's what we're proposing as the first topic. So if people want to dig into that, that would be wonderful. And finally, just warning, hazardous to voters, may cause irritation with electoral outcome, known to be addictive to party bosses, etc., lead to cancer of democracy. All righty. So please, comments and questions, and what your thoughts are. Yeah, please open the floor. And don't forget to unmute yourself if you'd like to comment.
It's Wendy. I have a comment. So I'm in the York Region Fair Vote chapter, and I think what I've encountered in the last couple of years that I've been with Fair Vote is you get into a conversation with somebody. It doesn't have to be complicated because most of us know that our votes don't turn into representation. And then they say, what can I do? And like coming to tables or that's good, but we have elections coming. And I think we need to build a call to action among everybody that we talk to about this on elections are coming. And we need to start talking. We need to talk to candidates, to sitting members, to anybody who's involved in the political machine about we want representation. And we don't have to talk about citizens assembly. We don't have to debate the benefits of different PR systems. We just say we want our votes reflected in government. Like all the votes should be turning into seats. So it can be, I think, a concise message, but people saying, what can I do? When somebody comes to your door, when you get one of those calls, tell them you want representation and tell them you want proportional representation. Because otherwise we just tell them it's really important and we all know it matters. And we just let them go. That's what I've been doing because I don't know what to tell them. What can you do? But elections are coming. We're going to have a federal election. We're going to have more provincial elections. In Ontario, I'm looking at 2 coming and I can see them happening. You know, they're starting to build. So maybe that can be a topic. Elections are coming and let's get the word out because politicians don't hear it from enough people that they care.
Right.
Are there
So
any,
actually, that is a great topic. We want representation. So, yeah, sorry, Daryl, were you
I
going to
just
say?
wondering, are there any parties, Wendy, that have as their policy electoral reform?
Sort of, but I don't really care about the parties. What I want is for people to say, I want representation, and I want them to say it to everybody. Like I want the message to go to all the parties. Like I have a really good MP who has been very supportive. I'm still nonpartisan. I'm not joining her party, but I do tell her that I admire her integrity, and I tell everybody she spoke up for us. She voted for us on M86, and I support her. But I'm also going to be working with the other parties because they all need to hear the same message. So I know your point, Daryl, but I'm not really good at following the parties as much. I'm into the grass, right?
Yeah.
Let's do the grass.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that you promote that particular, well, that you follow that party, but if voters know, the voters that really care about electoral reform, if they know that Party X has that as their policy, it might just help that along.
Maybe, except for a big part of our message needs to go to voters who typically think Fair Vote is a left-leaning niche group. And that means we don't really want to talk about the parties that have PR in it. We want to talk about why it matters to all of us as individuals. In my opinion, that's my opinion. Yeah. I know it's not, I don't,
No, you're absolutely right. We need to, we're not partisan and we need to be clear about that. And we know that PR countries have, they often have center-right parties. So there's that. What people can do, and again, and keeping it in front of the voters, part of the reason for this letter writing campaign, keeping it in people's consciousness. And I just want to finally reiterate what you've said, never getting into the weeds of different systems. It's just a no-win. And one of the things we think that the NDP did here in BC was present 3 different systems, and people could not wrap their heads around it at all. Do not get into discussing systems. Just a word of caution.
And I don't even want to talk about citizens' assemblies. I believe they are a great consensus building tool, but I don't want to have to explain to somebody citizens' assemblies.
Yeah.
I want to go straight to the point. What do we want? Why do they care? And get them to talk to other people about it. And Daryl? I think elections are coming is a good emotional hook.
Well,
Daryl, I have a
piggybacking on what Wendy's is saying. I think that strategically, when we know that elections are only 6 weeks long, basically, this is the time to mostly impact what we're doing with writing or with the media, because that is when it has everybody's attention.
Yeah, you
Yep.
got to do it before. If we wait for the election, we're too late.
No,
We know the election, but we know the election's coming.
Yep.
That's my point.
Yep, exactly.
Daryl, you asked about a group in Nova Scotia, which is where I'm from. The Liberals have put it in their platform, as the Greens always have, but they have now put it in their platform to have PR here and have a committee look at it, and that's part of their electoral promises. Of course, there's probably very little chance that they will get in, but they have been one of the main governing parties here for a long time. For that to happen, this is fantastic. And just this evening, before coming onto this, I actually ran into the person who was the representative for the Liberals in my riding. And I asked her, I said, you know, I'd like to speak to you about this promise in your party's platform. She didn't even know that it was there or what proportional representation was about. So we have a lot of education to do everywhere.
Yes, the thing seems to be that parties that are low down on the polls will back proportional representation or electoral reform, but as soon as they get elected, they don't want to do that. They want to stick with the system that got them elected.
Mrs. Taylor, Deb,
Yes.
I too am in Nova Scotia, and my understanding with the Liberal promise there is that they're talking about a rank ballot system. Now, is that truly a representative? Is that a PR system or is it not a PR system? They
In
call
their
it that.
in their platform, they did not say rank ballot. In their platform, I read their platform. They said they were going to form an expert commission to look into it and try to bring it forward.
Okay.
So
I actually had seen it on the CTV. One of the representatives said that, but maybe that's just his opinion.
could be.
So is rank ballot, is that a proportional system, or can it be a proportional system?
No.
so single member rank ballot is not proportional and is worse.
Okay.
So think the Liberals will be people's second choice. A multi-member rank ballot. I mean, this is just for us. Don't get into this.
No. I was just asking.
But a multi-member ranked ballot is single transferable vote. It is proportional.
Yeah, I'm gonna say because there are countries that use that type of rank ballot,
Ireland.
and it is proportional. Yes.
Ireland. The difference is one is in a single member riding, it is not. In a multi-member riding, it is. So that's
Yes.
kind of my simplistic explanation
Okay.
of that.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Yep. Yep. Folks, any other thoughts or comments? I'm hoping that a lot of you will join. Email me and I'll add you to the letter writing campaign. I'll put up our first suggestion, but I think we might have another one. Elections are coming. I'm not. Anyway, Daryl and I'll have to brainstorm that. And if anybody else would like to be part of deciding topics and finding some points to make, that would be great. And let me repeat, don't feel like you need to stick to our topics. If you've got a burning local issue, go for it. Just let the rest of us know what you've done, post it, because again, that can spur somebody else on to go, aha, that might fit for me as well.
You know,
Yeah,
sometimes sometimes you can piggyback a bit on something that someone else wants to do. And the most recent example of that for me was that I was approached by someone who heads up a diversity Thunder Bay type column in the paper. And she originally asked me if I could write about something else that we'd been talking about at a meeting, but I said, you know, I think I could write about electoral reform for you for that column because she likes to have guest columnists. So I was able to pull in some stats about how, you know, newcomers to Canada and immigrants are more likely to feel included under a system of proportional representation than under the first past the post system. how First Past the Post has made some inroads at bringing new Canadians into government, but it's been very, very, very slow. And also how people are less likely to become radicalized into something extremist if they feel included in more mainstream political groups, which, you know, a system of proportional representation would allow more for that. So I was able to write this column under the auspices of, you know, a weekly feature for this diversity group and work electoral reform into it because I found an angle that matched that group's needs. So if you can find a group that's got something going on in the local media, sometimes you can work your way in there with electoral reform because honestly, it fits into so many
Everything.
that people are
Yeah.
having everything. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good point.
yeah. I mean, climate change is another obvious one. And again, the countries with PR make more inroads, have done more with climate change. For one thing, they don't worry, they are able to reach more of a consensus. And again, that research is on the Fair Vote Canada site. And I guess, again, one of the benefits of being part of this group would be to say, look, I have this opportunity to write on diversity, whatever. Can anybody help with, you know, can Cindy produce what she wrote or whatever? Any other comments, folks, or thoughts?
I was thinking that I haven't had a chance to look at all of it, but the idea of cooperating for Canada, so it isn't a foregone conclusion that the Conservatives would win the next federal election in Canada. So I'm not sure if the idea is in cooperate for Canada, but the idea that the three progressive parties would just run, they wouldn't compete with each other. And the idea would be, it would be a one-time thing to get proportional representation instilled or passed finally after the election.
So certainly that's not anything that we would be advocating through Fair Vote. And I know that has been proposed. And in fact, I began my advocacy here with just that idea in terms of getting progressive parties to cooperate. It went nowhere. And anytime I've heard of it, it goes nowhere. So, and again, coming back to the fact that we are nonpartisan. And so we really need to step back from anything that indicates we want this because it'll help the progressive side of things. People are all conservatives are already leery of that. So we do need to be careful about that.
I'm sure somebody
Yeah.
will come up with that idea anyway. Not
I think,
us, but out there somewhere.
Oh,
Yeah,
it has.
I think my angle would be that Conservatives are welcome as well. So just selling it as just not flipping back and forth all the time, but getting, for all the reasons we've talked about tonight, getting more representation for everyone, and then not having the flip-flop where we pass legislation and then the other party undoes it and back and forth. So more cooperation so that everyone across the spectrum could get on board. So that, I think that would be one way around. So yeah, I wouldn't use the words that I used to.
No.
Yeah, I think what the best way of stating that is that it does not matter what party you belong to. Proportional representation benefits all people, and it increases stability amongst any government that's in power. And that way, you're not specifically pointing out any particular party, but it's beneficial for whatever party they feel they're part of. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I like the term cooperate for Canada, Michelle. There is one thing, when you talk about policy lurch, and when we talk about policy lurch, and if you bring in the cost of policy lurch, there's some people that went through a presentation with me they've done on the cost of the power system policy lurch in Ontario, where we've gone
Yeah.
from natural gas to wind to nothing. It's over $1 billion. And the question to anybody of any political leaning is, what could we have done with $1 billion? And that resonates with everybody. So I personally think I'm going to start putting a little more attention into what are the policy lurch history and make it personal, right? Like you said, and what was the cost of that? And then for that person I'm talking to, what would they want it to be doing with that money? Whether it's, hospitals or climate change or tax cuts. I don't really care what they want to do with it, but if they can see, if we could stop this shocking waste of time, energy, and money, we could make progress on many things. And I like that. That is a truly nonpartisan or non-political kind of
Yeah,
story.
no, that's really interesting. I'm writing down these ideas for future topics, and coming back to ask a question: what could we have done?
Yep.
You know.
Yes. What would you do with $1 billion
Mhm.
in this country? Right.
Oh yeah, that's a
And
really
the
good.
presentation that I saw, they had 6 hospitals. Like they built 6 hospitals, and I was like, yeah, like we just waste so much.
May I say something? I really agree with Wendy. I haven't done any letter writing because it's not one of my strengths. That's why I'm here. But I've had a lot of conversations with people who are on opposing political spectrums, and the policy lurch thing definitely gets people because I start talking. I tend to be somewhat left of center, but I know a lot of people who are really worried about taxes and expenses. And if you point out to them that the next government that they think is going to fix everything is going to spend a lot of money doing policy lurches, that really gets their attention. So I think, like what Wendy was saying, that would be a really, really good approach.
Yeah, it attracts conservatives for sure.
Yeah, that's what I've found. It's one way to find some common concern and make them realize you're not just wanting everybody to vote the way you do, you just want less government waste, right? And just, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, interesting. Good point.
Yeah. Thank you.
I just thought I'd jump in. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, good, Laura.
Hi. I've done quite a bit of going door to door in my writing, and I've had some good conversations with conservative voters because I live in a safe liberal seat, both provincially and federally. So, and I'll be like, you don't have representation where you live currently because it's been liberal and it's going to keep being liberal. So definitely, there's definitely a way to reach conservative voters. I also there's someone in the chat that asked, do you think writing letters to papers is more effective than writing to politicians?
Yeah, I didn't see that. That's a good question. I guess I would say both. You know, I think writing to politicians is a good idea because then they know there are people interested. And a hard copy letter apparently is more effective than an email. And they always say if there's one person writing, then there's a lot more who have those same concerns. So I don't know, Laura, which would be better. I think, it depends how you're feeling that day, or, if you think you can get somewhere with your politician.
Yeah, I mean, I write to my politicians all the time, but I've never written to a newspaper or something like that. I feel like for me, there's a bit more of a learning curve to that.
Well, hopefully we've made some points for you. And like I say, just like take lift chunks. Hard to know. I mean, I guess the question is, do people read letters to the editor anymore? I think the answer, some segments do, and there's online papers that people do read. So um, you will reach more people for sure than just your politician. And I live in a conservative riding, at least federally, and so it feels like writing to my politician is just a waste of time, quite frankly. So
Yeah, one alternative is to actually get some people together and go and visit your politician, make an appointment, and discuss not the party politics necessarily, but the whole idea of electoral reform and the benefits of that.
yeah.
Yeah, and do it now. Like there's no reason to wait, right? Just say you get a few people you want to go in. I read a really good book. You guys in Nova Scotia, do you remember Graham Steele, who was a finance minister in Nova Scotia? Anyway, he was NDP, and he wrote a book called The Effective Citizen. I I, I read it online, and then I went and got myself a copy because I need to mark it all up. I took so many notes, and he talks about writing letters, writing emails, going to see like how to really get a politician to listen to you. And he has a few key messages, and one of them is you need a lot of people. They need to see that it matters to a whole bunch of people in their constituency.
Was The Effective Citizen by who?
Graham Steele.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That
it's
sounds
really
like
good.
a good book, Wendy. And just to go back to Laura's point that she's written letters to politicians, but that newspapers feels like a bigger step. I co-wrote a letter with Nancy, who wrote one of the letters to the Shellbrook Chronicle. I think we co-wrote a letter to the Shellbrook Chronicle. I think that's another idea for people that are feeling a little bit hesitant, perhaps, to write their first letter to the media. Team up with somebody who has some experience doing it, and maybe write your letter and then have someone else look at it and work on it together. You can always just send it in under your name. I've ghostwritten for people. That's like ghostwriting when you write for someone else, but they send it in under their name. And I've ghostwritten for people before. Like that's kind of fun because then someone else can send the letter to the editor. And so they're not just seeing the same person sending something to the newspaper all the time. So they're more likely to publish it. But you actually wrote it, just someone else agreed to send it in under their name. Or like I say, you can co-write with somebody, and that's a way to sort of get some confidence with that.
I've done the same. Thank you. That's a really good suggestion when you feel like they've seen too many letters from one person. So
Thank you. Great idea.
Yeah, I have a funny story. With my letters to the editor to the Castanet in Kelowna, I got carried away one day, and I think I wrote 2 letters in a week. And I got this nice letter back from the editor saying, we really can't put in all your letters, and we like to restrict it to 1 a week or 1 a month or something like that. But he was very humorous and very, very nice about it. So I'm taking care now.
You should have sent it to me, Daryl. I would have sent it in.
Yes. Okay. Well, I'll do that next time.
Yeah. Especially as I'm in Vernon. So, and yeah, Castanet always publishes mostly, but anything else, folk? So again, to remind you, if you want to be part of the group and be added to the campaign, email me and I'll add and our suggestion of polarization. But if you really got another idea, go for it. Just let the group know. And again, somebody else might want to pick up on that. It is about keeping the issue alive and about making it as easy as possible and cooperating with each other to get it done.
I think it's also a really good exercise for each person, just personally, to get used to expressing themselves about certain issues that they may not have felt very comfortable with before.
I'm just going through the chat here. I think, thanks for the comments. Yeah, some further ideas. I think if we're ever going to get anywhere, we have to support each other because sometimes it just seems like it's a really long road to hoe, especially how we felt after our last referendum here in BC. It was really discouraging, but we're in it together and I always say it took women a long time to get the vote, so we'll keep at it. All righty then, folks, if there's no more questions, I will send out the presentation and hopefully meet you in the group. And thank you for your time on a Sunday afternoon or evening.